clock was ticking on me. And I very rapidly got iller and iller and iller, and ended up thinking to myself, I've got to eat, I've got to find a way out of this hell. And meanwhile, the dog was getting weaker and weaker, and the day came when I had to make this choice. Do I see my mum and dad, my brother and sister again, or not? And the only choice I had, I felt, was to kill the dog.
Where were you born and what was your early childhood like?
My dad was a test pilot and he was asked to develop the Vulcan bomber Mark II. It was a very, very charismatic aircraft. It used to carry the UK nuclear deterrent. And so I had to be born in Macclesfield because that's where my dad was going to be for developing this plane. And so I had a fairly normal childhood, I suppose. But I think one of the reasons why my career began really was because of my dad. My dad used to fly these Vulcan bombers over our house, and he used to tip the wings of these planes to show that he was the pilot on that particular day. And it was so exciting as a little 5-year-old looking up in the sky and seeing this extraordinary aircraft roar really low overhead. And I thought to myself, wow, that's my dad. And I think this is why I became an explorer. And certainly by the age of 10, I was telling everyone, I want to be like Captain Scott of the Arctic, or Antarctic rather, or any number of these explorers like Livingstone, Stanley, Speke, Burton, Cook. All these names were exciting to me. People who'd somehow felt this urge to go off to exciting places. As I grew older, my dad was going to these exciting places too, and he used to bring back stuff like there's a little adder, a little snake that he put in a jam jar with methylated spirits to preserve it. He brought that back from Africa, and a bird's nest, all sorts of exciting little things from around the world. And it encouraged my dreams, I think, my curiosity, and also encouraged my thought that it's possible, even as a suburban child, to do something extraordinary out there. There's still a world to explore. I decided to read environmental science at university. I studied environmental science, and then, because I still hadn't worked out what I was going to do as a proper job, I read it in ecology. So I did another degree, studied again at a different university. And so I found myself back at home, age 22, having got to the end of university, thinking, okay, how am I going to make it happen? I saw an advert in a local warehouse. Someone needed a hand stacking books. I thought, okay, I'm going to earn enough money just to get myself to the Amazon. That was the place I dreamt of more than any. I thought, wow, get to the Amazon. That'll be absolutely brilliant. So I worked in the warehouse, got enough money to get myself to South America and back, and hardly any more than that. I set off with my dream of being an explorer, and with a very simple idea that I'd somehow cross the north of the Amazon basin. There was a road that hadn't been fully built. So I thought, I'll try and cross that bit of the Amazon. I knew nothing really about rainforest, knew nothing really about myself. I hadn't been exposed to the outside world. I wasn't a proper Boy Scout or, doing outside stuff. I just had my dream. But I had clung on to this dream, and I turned up in South America and turned to the local people and said, could you give me a hand? And it was quite extraordinary. People did give me a hand. They were so generous to me when I look back on it. These frontiersmen, really rough characters with their shotgun, these hunters, all these people who were gold miners, a lot of people exploiting the Amazon. But they were amazing to me, really. And indigenous people as well, helping me along with my dream. And it's a really good early lesson for me. If you have a clear view of what you want to do, because in the end, I knew I wanted to try and cross that northern Amazon, people will help. And one after another, these people did help me through the forest in canoes, on foot, and so on. It's my first taste, really, of the generosity of indigenous people, but ordinary people generally. I mean, maybe they just didn't want me to die on their hands. So that did strike me. Everything had gone well for 5 months, but I came across 2 gold miners in a shack, and they were drunk. And they started picking arguments with me, and I began to feel really uneasy about this. I mean, yeah, I've been there for 5 months now in the Amazon, but I was still very vulnerable, and I knew it. And one night, when they were drinking, I heard the two men say, let's go and get him now. And I saw one of them at least had a knife. I could see it in the moonlight, and this flash of a blade. I edged out of my hammock, crept down to the water side, and got in my canoe. The canoe had my dog in. It was sort of guarding my things on the canoe. And I launched off into the night to get away from these gold miners. I thought I got away with it. I thought I was going to be okay. But the canoe capsized. I lost everything, including the dog. The dog was washed away down the river. All the things I needed to survive pretty well were washed away. And I clawed my way to the riverbank. And then it began, the real nightmare, because I was probably 65 miles from the outside world. And yeah, I'd been in the Amazon for a while, but I had no real ability. I'd been helped along by all these really generous people, foresters, gold miners, frontiersmen, indigenous people. But I was still a child with this dream, really. And now I was exposed to the reality. My mum had always said, take a survival kit. I mean, she knew more about exploration than I did. You must take your survival kit. And so I must have had that kit with a compass, torch, fishing line, fishing hooks, and a few other things. But anyway, with my compass, I began walking northeast, I think it was, towards the outside world. The Amazon, it seems such a vibrant place. And you could hear the insects, and you could feel them almost, because of this whistling, this hissing in your ears. But it's very difficult to see much because of all the leaves. So you know you're in a place of life. But once you're in amongst those trees, away from the rivers, it's a very dark place. The humidity is very oppressive. And I was aware, as I walked alone through the Amazon, of how isolated I was as a human. I was very aware that all the species around me were the best of their kind. I mean, it's a highly competitive world. These insects, these mammals, whatever's there, the birds, they've been picked apart by evolution. So they've got these extremely resilient species. And I knew when I was walking alone through the forest that this was my only chance. I felt the insects biting me, the mosquitoes, the ants. I was lying down in the forest to sleep when I was alone there, and the ants would just crawl over me as if I was nothing. And of course, to them, I was nothing. I was just a log, they'd just walk across. I had nothing apart from whatever I could think about, which was the future. Maybe one day this would all be over if I could get out of the forest. And then something extraordinary happened. My dog turned up, and that was such a morale boost for me. I should say, this was not a pet dog from home. I'd found this dog with cut paws, and I'd helped the dog. I'd healed the paws and was just taking it along with me. But he was my friend, and now he was my companion when I desperately needed a companion. I was so lonely. And it got worse now because I got malaria. In fact, I had two sorts of malaria. And it turns out one of the sorts of malaria I had was falciparum. Vivax falciparum, and that is cerebral malaria. You can die in 24 hours of getting that. And so in fact, the time was ticking away. The clock was ticking on me. And I very rapidly got iller and iller and iller, and ended up thinking to myself, I've got to eat. I've got to find a way out of this hell. And meanwhile, the dog was getting weaker and weaker, because he couldn't eat at all, because he's, a carnivore. But we were both basically starving to death. And the day came when I had to make this choice. Do I see my mum and dad, my brother and sister again, or not? And the only choice I had, I felt, was to kill the dog. And I can hardly remember this now. You have to imagine I was feverish. My mind was coming and going. I was delirious. But it seemed to me, my justification at the time was that it was an act of mercy, really, because the dog was dying, I was dying. And so it didn't seem like a sort of act of betrayal. I suppose we all have to make these decisions, or we hope we don't have to, but certainly it was given to me at the age of 22. Do I want to see my mum and dad again? How much do I really love them? And so I made this decision and killed the dog and ate what I could. But I was so ill, frankly. I was just sick, and I don't know what difference it made. And I was not at all sure I would survive. But if I did, then I'd have to do something with my life for the sake of the dog. I do remember that the shock of that daylight and seeing cut branches. That was the first thing. Dimness, and then suddenly seeing these first cut branches. Humans were somewhere near, fellow humans. I'd been alone for something like 3 weeks now. And the first sign of humanity, it was extraordinary just to see the cut forest and then the sky where humans had opened up that forest. And I stumbled through someone's maize crop and then vaguely remember a man who just saw this spectre, this ghost, me, coming half dead or more out of that forest.
And did you make it to the end of that road? Did you get all that way?
That was another incentive, actually. It was a great feeling, thinking I actually will have pulled off my journey. I would have become a proper explorer because, I was the first person to make this journey across the north of the Amazon. Me, an outsider from Macclesfield, up in the north of England, with no sponsors, no companions, no money really to speak of from the outside world. It was a homegrown endeavour in that it was local people who'd helped me along. And then this final test, and I seem to have come through this test. Just this one nagging feeling, which was the dog, it just sort of played on me.
What did you do with the next expedition, the next voyage? Where did you go?
I found myself with people called the Nyara in the sea pig of Papua New Guinea. And the Nyara had an initiation ceremony for young men. And it was said to make boys men as strong as crocodiles. That was the phrase. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I found myself getting more and more intrigued by this idea. The elder said, look, you want to understand how we survive in the forest. We survive by going through this ceremony. Every young man goes through it, and he doesn't get any recognition, any status, any place in our society unless he's been brave enough to go through the ceremony. I was lined up with all the other young men to go through the ceremony. My head was shaven. We were each given little grass skirts, and we were held in a little group while the old men prepared the initiation ceremony. A huge fence was erected around the spirit house. It was about 15 foot high, made of bamboo, and this was the crocodile nest. And we were now invited to walk inside the crocodile nest. We were going to be kept there for as long as it took to become a man as strong as a crocodile. And the elders were calling out to the Avuguak, the great crocodile ancestor, to help make us strong. And they're also calling out to a lot of the women in the village to hand over their sons because they're still hiding in the forest, not wanting to go through the ceremony. And we didn't know what was involved. We did know we would emerge with initiation marks, and these were the marks of the crocodile, hundreds and hundreds of little stipules, little bumps like a crocodile's skin down our chest and down our back. But again, somehow at the age of 24, I thought, oh, well, never mind. It's part of the process. I didn't really think it through. I was very aware of how explorers through history had gone in and imposed themselves. And I was quite idealistic. I thought, no, I want to hear from indigenous people. And I was very determined that would be how I would do my exploration from now on. And now, here was the ultimate immersion. And I was led inside the crocodile nest with my fellows, about my age. I was 24, I think. We were invited to lie down on upside-down turned canoes. And this was the bit we'd been dreading. And we thought, here we go. And we were laid on our backs and cut repeatedly with bamboo blades, which was not good. I mean, it was proper blood. I mean, blood was everywhere. We lost probably a litre of blood, 2 pints each. We couldn't stand up after this. Cut and cut and cut with bamboo blades. It was terrible. I was left to last. So everyone wanted to initiate their son first. And so I sort of left there watching all of this, and then my turn came and it was pretty bad. This is probably the worst day of our lives. It's a great feeling to have. You think, I've been through the worst possible day. Nothing will ever be as bad as this again. That's quite a thought. Except we were totally wrong. That was one of the better days. The old men told us to start dancing. We started dancing, and then they came out and thrashed us with sticks. And we were told we had to sing these happy dances, happy songs, do these dances every day. We were going to do it 5 times a day, because that was a sacred number. And it would carry on until we were men as strong as crocodiles. After a month, we were feeling, we were really sick of this, being beaten every day. And it must have been the harshest ceremony on the planet of this sort. We were in quite a bad state. And I was thinking, I'm not sure. I really think I should end this process, after a month. It's just not me, But by now, I couldn't. People did say, look, if you walk out, it'll be a disgrace to everyone. You've been allowed to go through the ceremony. And it's true, it was a huge privilege. But I also didn't really want to leave. When you've been through a harsh experience, or just an experience like that that's tested you, you know each other so well. And I thought, no, I can't do it to my fellows. I can't do it to these young men who are from a totally different culture from me. They belong here, I don't. But we're all in this together. And that was what the ceremony was all about. It was all about us working together. We began to realise we weren't going to be allowed out of this ceremony until we had learnt this sort of central message, which was that alone we can't do much, but together we can achieve extraordinary things. And the ceremony really was all about us bonding together. Finally, after 6 weeks, we were allowed out, and the elders pushed us off into the water. And this is what mother crocodiles do with their young. They release them, they give them their freedom, and that freedom was now ours as well. And it was an extraordinary moment of pride, thinking we'd been through hell. The local boys who I got to know, they were going to be given more power in the village, and I felt I had to document the ceremony, whose societies were being wiped out. The habitats were being destroyed. I'd already seen a bit of this, and this was way back in the 1980s, so much more was to follow. But that was me now set up, really, as an explorer who'd do things differently, I felt. If you call yourself an adventurer or an explorer, you should, out of kindness or empathy or having the courage of your convictions, really, you should turn to the local people and not expect to be rescued by your own kind, not expect to depend on outsiders. You should be in the hands of the people who understand that environment. I needed to abandon my Western technology. Yes, it would be rather nice to have a GPS and it'd be nice to be rescued and so on by my own kind, but I wanted to do it on their terms, and I wanted to be able to look them in the eye and say, look, we're all in this together. I'm not going to be rescued any more than you.
I heard that you were shot at by Pablo Escobar. What happened?
It was not what I planned. Because these expeditions, most of it's quite quiet. I was paddling across up a river. I was trying to cross the Amazon Basin at its widest point, which I thought would be really good. My first expedition had ended so badly, attacked by gold miners. 10 years later, I thought, go back, try and understand the whole place, cross the whole environment. You've got these skills now. You can paddle a canoe, you can spear, you can survive in the forest. So little did I know that Pablo Escobar was rumoured to be down in the lowlands. This was not long before he was killed up in Medellin. And I wish I could say I saw him on the riverbank. I didn't, but certainly his gang was there. And the thought amongst the local people who were trying to warn me off going up this river was that he was there himself. And certainly that seems to have been the case, because I was just paddling along my canoe. Yes, there was cocaine business around. On the Peruvian side of the river, coca leaf was being grown. The other side of the river, Colombia, it's being processed in secret laboratories. But it was a sort of cottage industry, but this was something different. There's a bunch of town people on the riverbank, and it's quite flashy people with golden buckles on their shoes and their Cuban heels. I mean, they weren't mixing with the local people. I thought, who are this lot? I thought, I better just keep on going. Paddle, paddle, paddle. And suddenly 2 people were chasing me. And they meant business. They had rifles. Local people hunt with a shotgun. But these are rifles, and they were serious-looking rifles too. And the man in front raised this rifle. I thought, oh my God. I mean, I'm a big target. And I wasn't far away, maybe 20, 30 meters ahead of their boat. And the man in the front took his first shot, and boom. And I still remember the pressure wave of this bullet. I mean, that's my feeling. It was just the power of this bullet going past my ear. And then the sound. And it wasn't the last bullet either. I mean, 6 bullets. They kept on missing. And there's this sort of element of humour in this whole thing. I mean, not at the time, but I was just scared stiff and thinking, any moment I'm going to be dead. But I looked over my shoulder to find out why they kept on missing. And these people couldn't paddle a canoe and kill someone at the same time, it turns out, because they were town people. These were city people from Medellin. And they were gangsters, effectively. They were assassins, they were hitmen, I think, bodyguards of Pablo Escobar. And I got away with it, got round the corner and jumped into the forest. And it was a classic reminder to me that us, outsiders, were helpless. Not just the hitmen, but people like me as well, unless we see the forest as a home, see the desert as a home, see the Arctic as a home. I should learn from local people who saw that place as somewhere that could help them, not as somewhere to fight.
Where was the most exciting place that you have visited?
So throughout my career, at first it was rainforest. It became a sort of specialist thing. I knew how to survive in rainforest, thanks to indigenous people. And first it had been with the Nyara, who are so-called crocodile people, whose ceremony I went through. Then the Matses, who are jaguar people with spines in their lips, tattoos across their face. So turning to people who, in a way, had alternative role models, or one way or another had found a way of living in the rainforest. So I learned from them. Then went across deserts. I had camel teams across the Gobi, walked up the Namib Desert, and that was brilliant as well. But there's one place that I'd never got to know, and that was the Arctic. I was aware that I was pushing my luck. You know, it's easier in the rainforest than it is in the desert, where you can die in 3 days if you don't have any water. But the hardest of all is the Arctic. The hardest place where humans have found a home is the Arctic. So you can fall through the ice, die in 30 seconds, maybe a couple of minutes if you don't have a heart attack. So that's the hardest of all. So I was scared of going to the Arctic, and yet I wanted to understand people like the Chukchis, the reindeer herders, who somehow made a home of the tundra and the Arctic seas. So off I went, and the expedition was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. It's the worst winter in living memory. It was the year 2000. And very soon, the dog team that I was trying to get to know, I'd been given a dog team, or lent one, and they just didn't want to hear from me. They could tell I came from the UK, you know, they could tell I was a Brit. They could tell I wasn't hardened. I'm the wrong shape, you know, I'm almost 2 meters tall. You know, so I was so lean and thin, I was freezing. Anyway, it was terrible. The dogs gave me a really bad time. They wouldn't listen to my commands. Dachte, which means left, or stu, which means right. They wouldn't listen. They wanted to be in safe hands, quite rightly. And we went off a cliff. It was in the dark. I mean, I had the most horrendous time. And then it all started to work. I was trying to cross the Bering Strait through the pack ice from Russia to Alaska. And it got to about halfway, but the dogs were listening to me. And then, again, it all went wrong. I lost my dogs in a whiteout, effectively. I'd left the sledge with all my supplies, left my 10 dogs, walked forward to decide whether I should carry on going or not. In all this pack ice, it's a sort of bewildering place, all this jumbled up ice, all these huge blocks, and then snow came from nowhere. Couldn't see a thing, couldn't find my way back to my dogs. And I thought, we're all going to die out here. The dogs needed me, I needed them to get out of this labyrinth. Things unraveled really, really badly. And I had a terrible, terrible night. And I was pacing backwards and forwards to try and keep awake, thinking if I don't see the dogs first thing in the morning, even if I last to the morning, then we're all finished. So I had to keep on going through the night, keep myself awake, keep slapping myself, keep on believing in finding these dogs. And I thought, if I survive this, I'm going to stop. I've almost died 9 times. I've been shot at by Pablo Escobar's people. I've been robbed and left to die in the Amazon. All these things I've survived. And I thought, I'm going to end here now in the Arctic. In the morning, I found my dogs. There they were, rather bored looking, waiting for me to sort myself out. So I decided there and then, don't carry on. Don't try and cross the Bering Strait. Just turn around and go home. And that's what I did. I turned the dogs around and we left the Arctic ice, the pack ice, over the tundra. Finally, I was safe again. And I stopped. I stopped my career. I stopped this lifelong passion, this lifelong obsession, and went home and settled down. I married, had children. And that was going to be the end of that. And you ask what was the best expedition. That really was the best expedition, and it was also the worst, because it's so physically painful every day with my hands screaming in agony. But it's also the best, because those dogs who knew this harshest of all environments that man has settled, the Arctic, these dogs that accepted me, and the chooches, the reindeer herders, they had accepted me too. And so I felt I really got somewhere. Yes, I had the passion still. I wanted to get out there to test myself. And of course, it's addictive. I've been pushed to the limit again and again. But I just thought, I'll die. If I do another expedition, I'll be pushing myself that much more and I'll die. And how grateful I should be that I've had all those years of realizing my childhood dream. No, everyone said I couldn't be an explorer as a little boy, as a child, but I had been. And, I'd explored, I'd been immersed in perhaps more societies, other worlds. I've been cut off more from my own world, perhaps more than any other living person. The way I do my exploring, which is to cut myself off and disappear into other worlds, that might seem like something that old-fashioned explorers did, because they didn't have the technology. They didn't have a phone and this sort of thing, so they had to do it that way. I do it on purpose because, for me, I should be exploring on the terms of Indigenous people. A lot of things that people think exploration is about, that it's seen as about planting flags and conquering nature and going to places in order to make a mark. And for me, it was totally the opposite. It was about opening yourself up and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and letting the place make its mark on you.
And you said something earlier that really struck me, which was that we kind of need explorers now more than ever. What did you mean by that?
Weirdly, I think we need explorers more than ever because, we just don't understand our planet. We've only named about 8% of the species out there. That's named them, let alone actually studied them. We don't understand the wood lice in our garden. There's so much out there. And there's a sort of sense of urgency now because of the habitat destruction around the world, the climate change. It's more important than ever that we have explorers out there. Not just scientists, but ordinary people who are just bearing witness to the world, interpreting it as best they can. It's actually more important than ever that all of us try to disconnect sometimes and connect with something else. We all have so much potential within ourselves, and we can explore on our own terms. And you don't need to climb Everest, because yes, there's great status in doing that. But what about the local hill? What about the local river? What about the local town, the local high street? There's so much to interpret about our world.
When you wake up in the morning and you want porridge out of your bowl, first of all, you've got to open your lips, okay? And you can't pull them apart. They're really entwined. So you use the Swiss Army knife, not the knife, but the file. And you slowly file your lips apart. Lots of blood.